The street was quiet that morning. Too quiet for a town that usually woke with the sound of kids walking to school and neighbors starting their cars. The calm was broken only by the voice of a police officer, shouting near a small blue house. "We need to check inside again," he said, pushing past the yellow tape that waved in the cold wind. Reporters stood behind the line, their cameras clicking. And right there, standing by the porch with her arms crossed, was Ashlee Buzzard, Melodee's mother. Her face was pale, her eyes dry. She hadn't cried once. Inside the house, a detective looked at the girl's room. The bed was neatly made, the curtains half open, and on the dresser sat a little pink hairbrush. But something wasn't right. On the floor, beside a pile of folded clothes, they found a black wig. It was small, child-sized. Everyone in that room froze. The detective whispered, "Why would a 9-year-old girl need a disguise?" That was the moment they realized this wasn't just another missing child case. Someone had tried to hide Melodee, maybe even help her disappear. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. Outside, Ashlee Buzzard lit a cigarette, watching them from the porch. "You won't find her," she muttered under her breath. But the biggest question remained. Why did she say that? The story of Melodee Buzzard began just a few days earlier in the same small town of Lompoc, California. Melodee was a bright little girl, always asking questions, always smiling. She loved drawing rainbows and wearing her favorite yellow jacket. Her mother, Ashlee, was quieter, often keeping to herself. People in the neighborhood said she didn't like visitors. On the morning of October 7th, neighbors saw Ashlee and Melodee getting into a gray rental car. Melodee had a backpack slung over her shoulder, and her mom looked nervous, checking the street before they drove off. "They going somewhere?" an old man across the street asked. "Maybe a trip," someone replied. No one thought much of it, until 3 days later, when the same gray car pulled back in the driveway, and Ashlee got out alone. When a neighbor asked, "Where's Melodee?" she said calmly, "She's with a friend." But no one ever saw Melodee again. At first, people thought maybe Ashlee had taken her daughter to visit family. But when Melodee's grandmother called and said she hadn't seen her in years, everyone started to worry. The school called the house, but no one answered. 2 days later, the sheriff's office came knocking. Detective Harris was assigned to the case. He was known for his calm but sharp instincts. "We just need to find out where they went," he told his team. They checked traffic cameras, gas stations, and highways. Then, a few days later, something strange showed up on a gas station camera nearly 50 miles away. The video showed a little girl walking beside a woman who looked like Ashlee, but the child didn't look quite like Melodee. Her hair was jet black, and she wore a hoodie pulled tight over her face. Still, her walk, her height, all matched. The timestamp on the footage was from the same day Melodee vanished. Detective Harris froze the frame and zoomed in. "That's her," he said. They tried to change how she looked. When officers questioned Ashlee, she didn't deny it, but she didn't explain either. "Melodee's fine," she kept saying. "You don't have to look for her." The more she spoke, the stranger it got. Her answers didn't match the timeline. She said they went to visit a friend in Fresno, but her rental car had been seen heading toward the coast. Meanwhile, the town grew tense. Posters with Melodee's photo were everywhere, on stop signs, on store windows, even on school gates. Kids whispered about the girl in the wig. Reporters crowded outside the police station. Late one evening, a deputy called Detective Harris. "Sir, you need to see this," he said. They had found something unusual inside a nearby storage unit rented under Ashlee's name. It was a pink backpack with Melodee's initials, MB, stitched on the front. Inside were her school notebooks, a half-eaten candy bar, and a single Polaroid photo. The photo showed Melodee sitting in a car seat, smiling faintly. But behind her, in the reflection of the window, was a blurred figure of her mother holding something in her hand. The image was dark and unclear, but it was enough to make everyone's heart pound. Detective Harris stared at it for a long time before saying quietly, "This isn't just a runaway case." That night, the sheriff ordered a search of every storage unit, field, and motel in a 20-mile radius. Helicopters flew overhead, their searchlights sweeping across the dark countryside. Meanwhile, Ashlee was taken in for further questioning. She sat across the table, silent, eyes fixed on the detective. When Harris showed her the photo and asked, "Where is your daughter?" she smiled faintly and said, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Then she leaned forward and whispered something that made the detective drop his pen. And that was the moment everything changed. Detective Harris stared at Ashlee across the table. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air vent. "Say that again," he said. Ashlee folded her hands and spoke slowly. "Melodee is safer if you don't look for her." Her voice was steady, almost calm. "If you keep digging, you'll make them angry." Harris felt his chest tighten. "Who is them?" Ashlee looked down at the table and shook her head. "You wouldn't believe me." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Harris stood, left the room, and stepped into the hallway where 2 deputies waited. "We treat this like a child in danger," he said. "Full alert. Expand the search." His voice was firm, but inside he felt the weight of every second ticking by. A child's life might depend on those seconds. Back at the Blue House, officers looked again through every room, every closet, every drawer. They took the black wig for testing. They dusted for prints on the dresser and the car keys. They even checked the backs of picture frames for hidden notes. Nothing told them where the little girl had gone. The town moved through the day like it had lost its breath. Flyers with Melodee's photo hung on telephone poles, the tape edges curling in the wind. Parents held their children's hands tighter at crosswalks. At the school, Melodee's desk sat empty, a small pencil box still inside. Her teacher, Mrs. Carter, set a sticky note on the corner: "Return safe." Harris sent pairs of deputies to every motel, highway rest stop, and grocery store within 50 miles. He asked store managers to check security videos from the past week. He called gas stations to ask about a gray rental car. Most places said no. They hadn't seen anything helpful. But then a clerk at a small roadside market said, "Wait, I remember a lady with a little girl. The girl had her hood up, and the lady paid cash. They bought water and a map." Harris drove there himself. The market sat by a long road of tall grass and wire fences. The clerk showed him the tape. The girl was small, the hood hiding most of her face. The woman beside her looked like Ashlee. When the pair left the store, the girl turned just enough of the camera to catch the side of her face. Harris paused the video. It wasn't a perfect match, but the shape of her nose and the way she held her hands felt familiar. Where did they go after this? Harris asked. The clerk pointed toward the west. That way, toward the old coastal highway. The old coastal highway ran along cliffs and windy curves. It had a few hidden pull-offs where people sometimes parked to watch the ocean. Harris called for patrol cars and a helicopter. "Search every turnout," he said. "Every overlook, every dirt road to the beach." Hours passed. The sun began to sink, turning the sky orange and pink. The helicopter's light swept the rocks below like a slow-moving star. On the ground, a deputy called out, "We found something." Down a narrow dirt lane, hidden by tall weeds, sat a gray rental car. It was quiet, locked, and empty. There were tiny shoe prints in the dust near the passenger door. Harris's throat went dry. He put on gloves and looked through the window. A pink ribbon lay on the back seat. Under the driver's seat was a folded paper map, the corner torn. They opened the doors carefully, like the car might say something if they listened. In the glove box, they found a receipt from a roadside diner. On the floor, on the mat, they found a crumpled note with smeared ink. It said only 3 words: "Don't follow us." The handwriting looked shaky, like someone had written it in a hurry. Harris stood very still. "Us," he repeated. "Not me. U.S." Somewhere out there, the detective thought, a child was moving with someone who didn't want to be found. But who was it? And why did Ashlee warn them about them? Night came fast on the coast. The wind picked up, carrying the salty smell of the sea. Officers set up lanterns and marked the area with cones. They ran the car's plates and called the rental company. The company confirmed the contract was in Ashlee's name. The return date was still days away. 8K 9 unit arrived. The dog sniffed the car, then the ground, then tug hard toward a footpath that led through scrubby bushes to a wooden overlook above the waves. Flashlights bounced in the dark as officers followed. The path narrowed, then opened into a small clearing with a view of the black water below. There, tied to the railing, was a child's yellow jacket. It was Melodee's favorite color. Mrs. Carter had said so. Her grandmother had said so. Harris knew it without anyone telling him. He felt the whole world tilt for a second. The jacket was tied with a careful knot, not tossed or lost, like someone wanted found. "Search teams to the beach," Harris said, his voice tight. "Check the rocks, the stairs, everything." The helicopter's beam swept the waves. Deputies moved fast down a narrow staircase cut into the cliff. On the last step before the sand, one deputy stopped. "Detective!" he shouted, voice echoing the wind. He aimed his light at the wet sand where the tide pushed and pulled in slow breaths. Side by side, there were two sets of prints, one small, one bigger. They led across the beach toward a dark gap under the cliff where a low cave opened like a mouth. The prints disappeared into the shadows. Harris took a breath and stepped forward. "Lights up," he ordered. "Careful." He lifted his flashlight and shined it into the cave. At first, he saw only rocks, seaweed, and driftwood. Then the light caught something white on the ground just inside the entrance. He crouched and picked it up with glove fingers. It was a small plastic name tag from a backpack strap. The tag said in tiny letters, "Melodee." A wave crashed, louder than before, and water rolled into the cave, washing over Harris's boots. From deep inside, a sound carried out, soft, thin, and quick, like a breath or a whisper. "Hold," Harris said, raising a hand. Every light froze on the cave's black throat. The wind fell still for a heartbeat. Then a shadow moved. Every flashlight beam locked on the caves, opening as the shadow moved again. Slow, unsteady, almost human. "Hands up!" one officer shouted, his voice echoing off the wet stone walls. The wind howled back in reply. For a few long seconds, nothing happened. Then, from the darkness, a small figure stepped forward. It was a child. Detective Harris froze. His heart leapt, but then stopped just as quickly. The girl's hair was jet black under flashlight. Her clothes were soaked, her hoodie clinging to her arms. The small figure blinked against the light and took one trembling step closer. "Melodee?" Harris said softly. The girl didn't answer. Her eyes darted between the officers, wide and frightened. Then, suddenly, she turned and bolted deeper into the cave. "Wait!" Harris yelled, running after her. Water splashed at his boots, flashlights bouncing off the dripping walls. The cave opened into a wider chamber, where the sound of the ocean grew louder. There, in the corner, they saw her again, kneeling beside a small lantern. And just behind her, sitting against the wall, was another figure, Ashlee Buzzard. Her face looked ghostly pale in the yellow light. She wasn't tied or hurt. She was just sitting there, calm as if she'd been waiting. Melodee clung to her, shaking. "You found us," Ashlee said quietly. Harris's voice broke the silence. "Ashlee, what are you doing? She's been missing for nearly a week." Ashlee sighed. "I told you, Detective. She's safer with me." They were watching her. "Who?" Harris demanded. Ashlee looked at the lantern. "The people who wanted to take her. You think I'm crazy, don't you? But you don't know what they did to my sister. You don't know what happens to little girls who get noticed." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. "They followed us. So I hid her. I had to make her look different. The wig, the hoodie, so they wouldn't recognize her." Harris lowered his gun slightly, his mind spinning. "Ashlee, you could have asked for help. You didn't have to run." Ashlee shook her head. "You wouldn't have believed me. You'd have given her back to them." One of the deputies whispered, "Sir, she's not making sense." Harris stepped closer. "Ashlee, let Melodee come with us. You can explain everything back at the station." But Melodee was crying now, gripping her mother's arm. "Don't take me," she said. "They'll find me again." Her words chilled the room. "Who, Melodee?" Harris asked gently. "Who's trying to find you?" The child shook her head, whispering, "The man with the black car." Harris froze. "What black car?" Ashlee's eyes snapped up. You see? She remembers, she shouted. He followed us from the store. I saw him waiting by the old bridge. I tried to lose him, but I couldn't. So I came here. It's the only place he doesn't come. The sound of the waves thundered in the cave. The team exchanged uneasy looks. The story was wild, but the fear on the child's face was real. Harris spoke carefully. We'll protect you both, but we can't stay here. It's not safe. Ashlee hesitated. You promise you won't go back to them? Yes, Harris said. You have my word. Ashlee stood slowly, her legs weak. She took Melodee's hand and started walking toward them. Just as they reached the entrance, the sound of an engine echoed faintly from above the cliffs. Deep, rumbling, too close. The deputies looked at each other. Is that one of ours? Harris shook his head. No units were supposed to move. The sound grew louder. Tires on gravel. A door slamming. Then headlights swept across the top of the cliff, casting long beams of light over the cave mouth. Ashlee's face went pale. It's him, she whispered. He found us. Everyone down. Harris shouted. The team ducked behind rocks as a shadow crossed the cave entrance. For a moment, a tall silhouette stood against the headlights, motionless, watching. Then it moved, slow and steady, down the cliff path. Harris grabbed his radio. We've got movement above the coast. Possible suspect, male, approaching the cave. Static. No response. The signal was dead inside the rock. The figure stopped halfway down the path, then turned its flashlight toward the sea. Its beam swept across the waves, then froze on the mouth of the cave. It was looking right at them. Ashlee pulled Melodee close, whispering, Don't move. Don't make a sound. Harris raised his hand for the team to stay still. The figure began walking again, closer this time. The crunch of boots on wet gravel echoed louder, matching the rhythm of the crashing surf. Then, suddenly, the flashlight beam flickered out. Everything went dark. The only sound was the ocean and the heavy breathing of the people inside the cave. Harris switched on his backup light, sweeping the entrance. No one there. He took a cautious step forward, the beam cutting through the mist. Show yourself, he called out. Silence. Then, from behind them, another sound, the unmistakable click of a camera shutter. The flash lit up the cave for a split second, and in that brief burst of light, Harris saw something that made his blood run cold. Behind Ashlee and Melodee, drawn on the wet cave wall, in what looked like red paint, was a symbol, a perfect circle with 3 short lines inside, like a triangle turned upside down. And below it, written in shaky letters, were the words, She is OURS. The camera clicked again. Then the flashlight beam from outside flared back on. But this time, it was right at the cave entrance, and the shadow holding it was no longer alone.